So this thumbnail I made shows the traditional route through the Sinai and over into Saudi Arabia, and it shows what we're going to talk about today, which is follow the green arrow down into Africa. So why did I say this, and what proof or what facts or what ideas can I give to support this? We've been told for centuries that Moses fled Egypt, and it's true. What we don't read enough is this verse. And Miriam and Aaron, sister and brother of Moses, spake against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman, or the Cushite woman, whom he had married. For he had married an Ethiopian woman. And the Hebrew word here is Cushite, or Cush, referring to the woman from the land of Cush, or Ethiopia. And I think this is a hugely important key to figure out where Moses might have gone. It's the number one key I want to look at. He married a Cushite woman. I'll show a map where most people assume the lands of Cush to be the lands of Put and Mizraim, which is Egypt, and the land of Cush. And of course, this woman was a Cushite by the scriptures. So the Bible itself gives us this forensic detail, if you want to call it that they attacked Moses because of his wife, because she was not of them, but she was a Cushite woman. So if Cush is in Africa, which is generally accepted, that Cush is down towards Ethiopia and the Cushite lands. And so if Moses married a Cushite, then we have to be looking at where would you find a Cushite if you wanted to marry a Cushite, I think. We're told that basically Moses went through almost 1,000 miles of desert with no wells and almost no water through probably the driest land in the world to go over to Saudi Arabia and stay there for 40 years with some sheep. That's more or less the story that we're given. But I want to look deeper into this narrative because it's important. I want to show here a map of the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. This is there's basically the two parts of Egypt, of course. The lower Nile, the delta as it goes into the Mediterranean, and the upper Nile. So up the Nile, as Abraham went up and south. The upper part of Egypt is where the kings lived in Thebes, and the Valley of the Kings is where a lot of archaeology is done today. But if Moses was in the royal houses of Pharaoh, and Pharaoh in the days of Moses, the pharaohs lived in Thebes and up the Nile in this area. And so what does that tell you? The land to go over to Arabia, he'd have to go up past the Red Sea, around, and then way over into Arabia. Whereas quickly he could go down the Nile River into Cushite lands. And let's see what some others said about this. But if we start the narrative where he actually lived, that helps a ton. And to understand the Egyptians as the Pharaoh, we see Pharaoh in the story, of course, chasing the Israelites in his chariot. The pharaohs and the leaders like Moses, even though he left, maybe he was 19, 20, 30, there's different ideas about the timing. But by the time he was 20, he was well trained, I am sure, in all battle and in some of those things we're going to read about, that he was actually a general. But the issue is he knew the land. He knew his own kingdom, top to bottom. He knew how to go out in the desert, but he also knew how to follow the rivers and follow the water and where to get food, those type of things. If you're a prince and you've just killed off an Egyptian to rescue a couple of Hebrew slaves who then tell on you, then where do you flee? Where do you flee, right? Where do you flee? Do you flee over here, the traditional route, or do you flee south? And I'm going to show why we think others like Josephus, who wrote almost 2,000 years ago, and the book of Jasher both have Moses going south. I put up this little thumbnail and or image, and it shows basically the death route or the killer route and the water route. Everything in the days of Moses throughout the whole world, everything depended on water and food, but water more than food. Food you can go a couple of weeks, and food you can go without for a while, but water, it's a day or two. And in the deserts, it's the thing that kills you. So there's the killer route or there's the water route. Well, the Nile was the bringer of life. It's the life route in Egypt. Even if these days you did flee into the wilderness through the desert, you would have to know where each well was along the route. And the route that we are given for Midian by the Babylonian teachings, or the teachings that we have in the world today, we are led to believe that he went into a land he had not gone into before, all the way over to Saudi Arabia, through the driest part of the world, where there's very few wells and very few people can even survive to go through, even in our day. But if we consider going south, what does he have immediately? He has access to water. Immediately, the Nile, if he follows the Nile River, which is huge, I'll show a few pictures of it, it is humongous, and there's water coming into it as well from the mountains in Ethiopia, which have lots of rivers as well, the Blue and the White Nile and all that kind of thing. But understand that Moses knew the territory, even the area of the Cushites we're going to see now. I want to label this one called the general returns, because in the Bible there's a 40-year gap that's just lost, not mentioned in the Bible. What happened from the time Moses was like 20 up until he was in his 70s? What happened to him for those 40 years? And I don't think he was just tending sheep. So what happened to him? So I'm here showing you this map that one of the commenters brought my attention to. It's quite interesting, the Frau Mauro map. And it shows the highlands of Africa at the top of the map, not as we have all our maps with Africa at the bottom. It has Africa at the top. And the highest part of Africa is up into the Ethiopian highlands, and then further south, Mount Kenya, Kilimanjaro, and all that, the Rift Valley and all through there. So this 40-year gap is super important, I think, to the narrative of this story. Josephus and the book of Jasher both tell us that Moses didn't just wander around for 40 years and then somehow find his way into Midian. It says that he followed the river down. In Josephus, it says that he was a general, and he fought the Cushites, and he went down, and when he had to escape, he went back to the land that he'd already known and conquered. They knew who he was. In the book of Jasher, it says that he was a king. Moses was a king over the Cushites for 40 years. And then when the son of the queen, not his queen, but the son of the queen, said, why do we have this Hebrew ruling us, and brought up her own son to be king, and then Moses left and then went to the well. So in the Antiquities of the Jews, Josephus provides that missing link. I'll read what it says. Moses came upon the Ethiopians before they expected him, and when he had joined battle with them, he beat them and deprived them of the hopes they had of success against the Egyptians. So this is when he was young, before he fled Egypt, and went on in overthrowing their cities, and indeed made a great slaughter of these Ethiopians. Okay, so that's in the Josephus account. And in the book of Jasher, it is an apocryphal book, so I'm not trying to spin one on you here. It's not part of the Bible, accepted canon, but it is an extra biblical book, the book of Jasher. And it says, and Moses was 18 years old when he fled from Egypt from Pharaoh, and he went to Cush, and he was there 9 years, and all the children of Cush loved Moses all the days that he reigned over them. And all the children of Cush were afraid of him, because he had some miracle powers, he had some power. They knew that God was with him. And in Jasher 76 it says, and it was at the end of the 9 years that Moses went out from the land of Cush, and Moses was 77 years old when he went out from the land of Cush. And Moses went to Midian, and he sat by a well of water. And then that's where we pick up the story in the Bible. So when Moses meets Zipporah, by this account, he is already in his 70s. He's not, now people lived into their 120, 130s in those days, but he was not a young whippersnapper like some of the movies make him out to be, right? He was more like me, an older fellow. But anyway, that's interesting. Doesn't prove anything, but it's fascinating. And you can go and read, I encourage you to go read the book of Jasher. It's fascinating account. And also Josephus, if that's an interest of yours. So now we get in kind of the crux of the matter. If he followed the water, followed the river, went to the lands he already knew, he was there for 40 years among a certain people, and then met Jethro, that kind of fits. But the key aspect here is that in the Bible account, Moses goes up on the mount and meets God in the burning bush. And that Midian is important, because if that Midian is in Saudi Arabia, that's one thing. But if that Midian is, as I believe, in the Ethiopian highlands, then where are we going to be looking for Midian, or the mountain of God, where Moses said he wanted to take his people, when he confronted Pharaoh, he wanted to take his people up to meet God in the mountain. An interesting side note is that to make the Ark of the Covenant, gold and acacia wood are found which is what the ark was constructed of, there's a lot of that in Cushite lands. In my last video I did, and I'll have a link to that here, we talk about that issue. But the Cushite lands were rich in gold and acacia and many other things. I don't mean to, and I'm not saying the ark was built there, but it is interesting that because in Saudi Arabia, they don't have gold out in the deserts there. There are some places that do have acacia, but they don't have the gold. Whereas in Ethiopia, they have the gold and they have the acacia and they have the mountains and the place for people to live because they have the water. So remember, in my channel, I'm not trying to prove. I want people to talk about it. I want you, please leave a comment what you think about this story. Do you think, if all you want to do is just put down traditional, that's what you believe, that's fine. Or if you want to put in the comments, I think it's Kushite, or put down Zipporah, or whatever you like. I really appreciate all the comments, especially from the people in Africa that have such deep knowledge of Kushite things and Shemite things and all the different things. So please, feel free to comment. No rude comments, please. Just, I don't mind if you think I'm wrong. No problem. I probably am about many things. But let's keep the comments civil, please. And I'd love to hear from you. I'll try to answer every question. I do my best to answer every comment. And I appreciate all those that like to watch or have enjoyed watching my videos. But remember that the story of Cush, it doesn't end with Moses and him marrying his wife, who was a Cushite. I think when you watch my video, I'm going to put a link to it here at the end, about the ark and how intertwined the ark was with Ethiopia and the Cushites as well. I think we can gain a greater respect for the people of Ham and the people of Cush. Yes, we know that Canaan was cursed, but Ham was not cursed. And his 3 other sons, Put, Mizraim, and Cush, were not cursed. And I think that colonialism in the world has made for great hatred towards certain groups of people, and that's sad. But the Bible never says that Ham is cursed. Go look it up. People will say, oh yeah, but he was naked in his tent. Go look it up. Ham was not cursed. Cush was not cursed. Mizraim nor Put were cursed. Canaan was cursed. I did a video on why that happened. It's in the book of Jubilees, if you want to go look it up. But Canaan was cursed, one of the sons of Ham. So this intertwining is super important in understanding and opening our eyes. Like I said, get rid of the horses. The horses, I'm not going to call them goggles, but get rid of the horses, blinders, I guess they call them. So we can start to see that, yeah, the Cushites actually were super important to God. Not only did they keep the Cushite Bible alive for almost 2,000 years, so we have the book of Jubilees and the book of Enoch and all those things, but they probably had the temple, the Ark of the Covenant from the temple when it wasn't desired or wanted, or the people were wicked in Israel. So there's a lot we don't know. But if you want to see my opinion on what happened to the Ark of the Covenant, how it came, how it went, how it came back for King Josiah, and where it went to after the people, before Babylon was conquered the Israel, I think I'll put a video here, link. I think you'd really enjoy this video. It's a longer video, but I think you'd really enjoy it. Thanks for watching, and I really appreciate your support. Take care. Have a good day. Bye-bye.